ओके, सो वी आर स्टार्टिंग विद अप्रैल 2020। पॉलिटी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर पंचायत एंड पैंडेमिक, रोल ऑफ सिविल सोसाइटी इन द टाइम ऑफ क्राइसिस, फिर कोविड-19 और उसके लीगल इंडियन फ्रेमवर्क, फिर रिजर्वेशन पॉलिसी, ऑनलाइन रजिस्ट्रेशन, ऑनलाइन जस्टिस डिलीवरी, फिर रेगुलेशन ऑन गवर्नमेंट एडवर्टीजमेंट, फिर इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस में अपन मेडिकल डिप्लोमेसी की बात करेंगे, देन कलेक्टिव एक्शन इन द टाइम्स ऑफ कोविड, देन द रोल ऑफ WHO, देन ट्रांसबाउंडरी रिवर वाटर मैनेजमेंट, इकोनॉमी के अंदर नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पाइपलाइन, revised healthcare policy, COVID-19 and poverty, then various impacts of COVID-19, that is shared responsibility and global solidarity report, then ILO monitor COVID-19 and world of work, then update on UNCTDA trade and development report, then global energy review 2020. Then we'll talk about special liquidity facility for mutual funds, then public utility service, then report on industrial relations code, then negative oil prices, then WTO peace clause, then special drawing rights and minor forest produce, then District Mineral Foundation Draft Electricity Amendment Bill 2020, then Open Market Sales Scheme Atal Innovation Mission, etc. In security this month, we are going to study about epidemics and national security, then Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. In environment, we are going to study this month the COVID-19 and disaster management, green bonds, Supreme Court relaxes BS4 deadline, petcoke, uranium contamination, Arctic ozone hole, Petersburg climate dialogue, naming of tropical cyclones, Antarctica experiences first known heat wave. Then social issues, we are going to study about urbanization of pandemic, gender violence and COVID-19, global report on internal displacement, global education coalition, then Vidyadhan 2.0. After that, in science and technology, this month we are going to study about BGC vaccine COVID-19, then updates on COVID-19 like transmission, testing, prevention methods, then vaccines and other treatment methods, tracking and surveillance, awareness generation and grievance redressal, capacity building and promoting innovation, then Indian initiative on Earth biogeome sequencing. After that, in culture, we are going to study about National List for Intangible Culture Heritage, Kissa Khawani Bazaar massacre. In ethics, we are going to study about social stigma, COVID-19. Then news in short, there are various news in short. There are 38 news in shorts. So we are going to read that. In government schemes, we are going to talk about PM Cares Fund, then intensification of research in high priority area, then ENAM platform. Starting with Indian polity and constitution, Panchayat and pandemic. So why it is in news? So Prime Minister in an interaction with Panchayat on National Panchayat Raj Day lauded the local government for their proactive approach to fight the crisis. Introduction. So 73rd Constitutional Amendment mandates the constitution of Panchayat at district, intermediate and village levels as devolved institution of self-government. It provides for the endowment of powers and responsibility to plan and implement programs for social justice and economic development at grassroots level. With more than 3 million elected representatives, India's local government or Panchayat Raj are in forefront of country's fight against pandemic. They are proactive in readying the infrastructure to treat people, to arrange massive movement of food grains for community kitchens, and also to maintain hygiene and social distancing at village level. They have emerged as a bridge between decision makers and the community that they would have to adapt or implement such decisions. Role of Panchayat in pandemic. So practical consideration of local language, local level knowledge. So due to proximity, Panchayat are usually the first point of contact for most citizens and thus best place to know about the mobility as well as social security needs. Community level engagement and dissemination of information become an easier task than deploying source resources from state level. Third, additional tracing individuals who have crossed states or districts make it imperative to have coordination efforts continuing till the last mile, while Panchayat being the eyes and ears on the entry and exit of individuals and families, especially during community quarantine. Second, administrative consideration. In this, first we have administratively, while their functions vary, Panchayat members are the nodal point across most social welfare programs and have the power to direct reach in their hands. With 2.6 lakh local rural local bodies or Gram Panchayat, and over 10 lakh frontline functionaries like ASHA and ANMs, etc., they can play a vital role in ensuring that welfare services get delivered on the ground and no person is left behind from accessing relief package for want of documentation or lack of knowledge. Third, reservation for women in three-tier Panchayati Raj institution gives PRIs extra advantage to work in coordination with lakhs of members of women's self-help group who are engaged in fight against COVID-19. Third is the level of trust. So from citizens' perspective, panchayats represent the quintessential community. Citizens have a comparatively higher trust in their local government and thus are more likely to approach them rather than other officials for their needs. So, Panchayati Raj institutions fighting at the forefront. First, the Health Ministry's micro plan for containing local transmission of coronavirus disease has placed Panchayat at forefront in increasing community mobilization and ensuring active surveillance. Second, the government allowed the Panchayat to use the earmarked funds under 14th Finance Commission for COVID-19 related activities. It made staple it made a special exemption for these works. Constitutionally, sanitation is the function of local government and COVID-19 related works have been brought under this function. Third, many states too have made panchayat the nodal agency for coordination for ensuring the health activities, information dissemination and determining that all vulnerable communities have access to food supplies. Fourth, the case of Kerala. With its long history of decentralization and both primary and secondary healthcare having placed under the purview of three-tier institution, Panchayat in Kerala are on the forefront of coordinating government in tracing, organizing health checkup camps, sanitation, social distancing messages, among others. Nearly a third of Kerala's planned funds have been given to Panchayat as flexible development and maintenance funds. The Kudumshri system, which encourages women to form self-help group and federation, acts as an organized civil society counterpoint to the panchayat collaborating with yet holding the account the latter for their performance. Next is an example of Odisha. So it delegated Sarpanch with power of district collector to impose quarantine at the village level. To ensure decentralized way of tackling pandemic, Odisha government has ensured every Gram Panchayat with registered facility and mechanism for community-based monitoring. Next state we have Andhra Pradesh. So village volunteers nearly 2.5 lakh have helped in a survey of 4.1 million of 4.3 million households in the state. They have conducted a survey to help the state to trace people with travel history to foreign countries and prevent the spread of COVID-19 infections in the state. What is the way forward to strengthen the PRIs? So first, while many functions have been transferred to Panchayat as mandated by Constitution, yet to fully transfer the rights and funds and functionaries to them to effective function like an elected government. It is time to give these governments their constitutional rights to better handle such crises. Second, the starting point could be the entry 23 of 11th schedule under Article 243G that reads Health and sanitation, including hospitals, primary health centers, and dispensaries. Until full resumption of normal economic activity, there would be a need to provide free and heavily subsidized food to millions of villages, including repatriated migrant labor. Entry 28 of 11 schedule mentions the public distribution system as among the subject for devolution. The most important requirement is planning to receive the migrant labor influx, including testing, quarantine, isolation, social distancing to extent possible and ensuring that all without exception are fed and housed and receive the monetary grants. Last mile delivery can only be comprehensively ensured by empowered panchayats and municipalities reporting to their respective gram sabhas and ward sabhas mandated under 243A and 243S. Planning for withstanding the increase of COVID-19 requires the full deployment of mechanisms for district planning envisaged under Article 243ZD. involving all three tiers of panchayat and municipalities brought together in district planning committee. On the occasion of National Panchayat Raj Day 2020, Prime Minister interacted with Sarpanch of Gram Panchayats throughout the country through video conferencing. He launched a unified e-Gram Swaraj and portal and Swamitva scheme. So e-Gram Swaraj will help prepare and execute Gram Panchayat development plans. The portal will ensure real-time monitoring and accountability. The portal is a major step towards digitization down to Gram Panchayat level. Swamitva scheme provides for an integrated property validation solution for rural India. The demarcation of inhabited land in rural areas would be done by the use of latest surveying methods. Drones technology with collaborated efforts of Ministry of Panchayati Raj, State Panchayati Raj Department and State Revenue Department and Survey of India. Village Volunteer System of Andhra Pradesh. Under this system, a new department of Gram volunteers, ward volunteers, village secretariat, ward secretaries were created. Each village secretariat has been set up for a population of 2000, with each one comprising close to a dozen village officials. Each volunteer is paid 5,000 per month, and the person has to ensure that benefits reach the people in 50 households in the village. In towns, ward volunteers have been appointed. Rationale for creating such a system. The system of CRE was created to ensure better delivery of various benefits to the public under welfare schemes. These volunteers coordinate and implement government welfare schemes in more than 11,000 villages of state. The system indirectly creates employment in rural hinterland and simultaneously create an accessibility and accountability chain. This in turn increases decentralization in implementation of schemes and also ensures capacity building of local functionaries. Next, we are going to talk about role of civil society in times of crisis. So, why in news, civil society organizations are at the forefront assisting people during the COVID-19 pandemic. Introduction. The World Bank defines civil society organization as a wide array of formal and informal organizations, community groups, non-governmental organizations, labor unions, indigenous groups, charitable organization, faith-based organization, professional association and foundation. Faced with an unprecedented COVID-19 global pandemic, government has constituted the Empowered Group EG6, chaired by CEO Niti Aayog, to leverage the network of CSOs. The EG6 has succeeded in galvanizing a network of 92,000 CSOs and NGOs to harness their strength and resources, expertise in key social sectors such as nutrition, health, sanitation, education, and extensive research in the community. Role of CSOs in crisis time. First, mobilize and channel resources. CSO can leverage strong relationship with communities and ready pool of volunteers and resources while also being a channel for private sector to deploy resources. CSO and NGOs mobilized by EG6 have been assisting and supporting the local administration in delivering an essential services, particularly for migrants and homeless population working in the urban areas. Second, provide immediate relief. Just like any other disaster, civil society can serve as a first responders by providing food, ensuring water and sanitation facilities in camps, and distributing protective gear, particularly in far-flung areas. Government reports that NGO mobilized by EG6 were successful in first providing shelter to homeless, daily wage workers, and urban poor families. Second, extending support for distribution of personal protective equipment for community workers and volunteers. Third, supporting the government in setting up health camps. Fourth, identifying hotspots and deputing volunteers and caregivers to deliver services to the elderly and persons with disabilities, children, transgender persons, and other vulnerable groups. Handling the mass exodus of migrant laborers. NGO are coordinating efforts and working closely with the district administrations and state governments so that measures of care, quarantine, and treatment go hand in hand. Run awareness campaigns. Give the amount of misinformation going around. CSO have major role to play in building awareness among communities, panchayat and public representatives. As reported by the government, CSO and NGOs network of EG6 was successful in creating awareness about first, prevention, hygiene, social distancing, isolation and combating stigma. Second, developing communications strategy in different vernacular whereby they become active partners in creating awareness at community level so that COVID-19 spread is tightly controlled. Then, holding government accountable. There are significant corruption risks during the times of crisis. Civil society has an important role to play in ensuring funds to tackle COVID-19 pandemic reach their destination. For instance, RTI petitions demanding details on how money donated in PM cares is being utilized. Challenges being faced by civil society during the pandemic. During the ongoing pandemic, civil society is facing several constraints on its ability to carry out its work as a result of lockdown, distancing, and quarantine measures. So, first, concerns related to their accountability. The crackdown of thousands of NGOs in recent years had positioned CSOs at the margins of administrative decision making. Several NGOs have been criticized as being corrupt and in violation of foreign funding norms. This makes it difficult for CSOs to hold government accountable in such crisis time, even as they themselves try to protect their credibility. Then access to information. Lockdown prevents physical access to information which was previously available for work and education institution, a library, etc. Moreover, lack of digital connectivity along with restriction on internet and digital illiteracy further restrict the widespread digital engagement with the stakeholder or access to information and communication. Third, gaining momentum for civil initiatives is difficult. During times of crisis, it can be very difficult to gain momentum and participants for a cause as media and public orientation are focused on the emergency. Then, restriction of movement prevents activities that require meeting physically. This is particularly the case for civil society's social accountability role, as most accountability tools require engaging local communities to come together to participate in initiatives. It is not possible when social distancing measures are in place. Opportunities for civil society during the pandemic. So, first is the potential to increase legitimacy of civil society through building broader participation by the network of online reporters and activists with strong links to communities in which they live. They, this may counter the tendency of NGOs to be driven by donor demands and need to secure funding. Second, potential of widespread engagement. The current situation has released an urge to participate, demonstrated by a huge donations to PM Cares Fund and helping hands coming towards to help migrants en route to their hometowns. Some of these engagement could be channeled through constructive support and alternative forms of civic engagement. Building of new alliances with other types of CSOs beyond NGOs such as professional association, example nurses and unions, and other membership based organizations. So in this, these different forms of CSOs has often good communication structures and can engage different people in monitoring oversight of COVID-19 responses. Building new alliances and network can help civil society organizations to break down silos and create new synergies between organizations which can prove useful in emergencies. Fourth, exploring platform for digital civic engagement. There are several examples of how civic engagement and accountability have moved online, with many untapped resources to draw upon to mobilize digital participation. For example, in UK, Frontline PPE provide information about availability of personal protective equipment. In Spain, Fren La Cava publishes requests for help or offers to collect food or medicine. Conclusion. The United Nations refer to the civil society as a third sector alongside the government and private businesses. In such testing times, CSOs have emerged as key supporting partners for the state in charting out a response. They have helped in widening the reach of state going forward, keeping in mind that potential there is a need to institutionalize the way they interact with the state. This not only will increase their legitimacy but also will pave the path for even wider and deeper cooperation. So here we are going to see the contribution of CSOs during COVID-19. According to a reply submitted by the central government in Supreme Court on 7th April, a total approximate of 84 lakh people were provided meals across the country during the lockdown started on 25th March. Of these, 54.15 lakh people were fed by the state government, while remaining 30.11 lakh people were fed by the NGOs. State-wise data presented by the center shows that 13 states and UTs NGOs outperformed state government in providing humanitarian relief in the form of free meals. Most of these meals were provided to stranded migrant laborers and poor who have been hit the worst owing to the losses of income during the lockdown. Overall, there were 9 states and UTs where NGOs fed more than 75% of people who are provided meals during lockdown. Apart from providing meals to the needy, NGOs across the country are also opened relief and shelter home for the people to take refuge. The analysis of central government reply shows that 10.37 lakh people in India took refuges in the shelter homes provided by state government and NGOs. Of these 10.37 lakh, 39.14% are staying in the camps set up by NGOs. In Maharashtra, 83.56% people were in campus set up by NGOs. In Meghalaya, this figure was 95%. Another development which reflects upon the critical importance of grassroots organizations, the workers' government has directed the Food Corporation of India to provide wheat and rice to these organizations at open market sale rates (OMSS) without going through the e-auction process. So right up till now we have completed two articles. First talked about the panchayat in the pandemic and the role of panchayat in the pandemic, then Panchayati Raj institution fighting at the forefront. Then we saw the way forward to strengthen the Panchayati Raj system. Then we saw the role of civil society in the time of crisis. In this we had read the introduction and the role of CSOs. We have also read about the contribution of CSOs during COVID-19. Other than that, we have seen the challenges being faced by civil society during the pandemic and the opportunity for civil society during the pandemic and conclusion thereof. After that, we are going to study about the COVID-19 and India's legal framework. So, why it is in news? The ongoing pandemic COVID-19 has highlighted glaring gaps in India's domestic law and the need for an overarching law to deal with such emergencies. Indian Penal Code sections used during COVID-19. So the first section, there are three sections which have been used recently. So first is 271 of IPC. Whosoever disobeys the quarantine rule shall be punished with the imprisonment or fine or both. Section 269 of IPC. Negligent act likely to spread the infection of disease. Section 188 of IPC. It is used for defaulters who disobey the orders of public servants during the lockdown. Background of the issue. Public orders and health are the subject that lie with the state as per the Indian Constitution. Thus, various states invoked the Epidemic Disease Act 1897 to pass orders and guidelines on social distancing measures and closure of establishments and limitations on activity. Disaster Management Act 2005 (DM Act) was then invoked by central government to impose a blanket lockdown to ensure consistency in the application and implementation of various measures across the country. Seventh schedule of Constitution does not have an explicit entry on disaster management. Hence, Parliament had to resort the concurrent list entry 23 on social security and social insurance, employment and unemployment to trigger provisions of the Act. Then, fourth, the fragmented manner in which these legal provisions have been invoked highlighted a lack of clarity on how the centre and states have interpreted their roles under the Constitution as it stands. Several experts thus are advocating for an overarching legal framework to deal with similar situations. Then we have Epidemic Disease Act and its limitation. After that, we have Disaster Management Act 2005 and associated issues, then earlier initiatives and other recommendations and conclusion. And at last, we are going to learn about the learning from the global best practices from Canada, Australia, and England. Then ordinance to protect the health workers. So why it was in news, the key feature of this ordinance, and the need for the ordinance and conclusion thereof. So with this, I'm concluding this, and we'll study from the Epidemic Disease Act 1867 in the next video. Thank you.